Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Human. We're going to wrap up this series on how to become attractive, how to be your most attractive self. We've covered vulnerability, authenticity, and now this one I think is really great, Jeff. You said you wanted to phrase this as the value add. How are we adding value to relationships, to potential relationships that make us attractive? And I have a lot that I want to cover on this, but I'm going to give you the first swing since this is your baby.
Okay. So won the Big Ten championship. Uh, I, I mean,
Did that happen? I
Mendoza
forgot that was in between these
Mendoza
episodes.
gets the Heisman. I mean, that's not. I guess we have the formality of the Heisman ceremony, but I we can endure that as Hoosier fans, and we go. We are currently ranked number one in the nation, and go into the playoff, the number one seed. So.
Who's your
Uh,
graduates, by the way? You and I both did college there, right?
Yes,
Okay.
and have long suffered. Uh, and I resent the newcomer fan base. I am that petty.
Yeah.
Uh, I have to accept it. I have no alternative but to bitch about it. But there, that will be my bitch, and I'll try to be less petty. But
That guy
yeah,
can really throw, by the way. I mean,
yeah, I
he
think we
is
have to predicate that on he can take a hit. I mean,
yeah,
because he got fucking
loud.
rocked.
Yeah.
Like, and then I think he and Signetti both, they've both become Signetti particularly. I mean, he's an he's one of one. He's a At this point you can't argue what he has accomplished. And he's such an anomaly because, in some respects, he seems perhaps off-putting. I've heard that word used. Not, I would never. All hail Kurt. But just fascinating in terms of challenging and maybe destroying all of your conceptions of what leadership would look like to his level of buy-in to the commitment to the culture, all of it. It just, and I don't mean that gratuitously. I mean, go IU. But what a fascinating, just uh, blueprint of what leadership can look like.
Well, there are in athletics, in that high level coaching sphere, there are so many parallels to what we see in high level corporate life. You know, when you're paying a CEO $30 million, or this CEO has rescued this corporation and then they get hired by this one and they come rescue this one, even cross category. Like there is just something about somebody's innate skill like that. And I will say in athletics, there is just a fierce competitiveness that is pathological among the coaches who really succeed at this level. And I think they know the personalities they have to coach, at that high level collegiately or, professionally, like they are just seething with confidence. I mean, they exude this command of attention. I mean, look at what Deion Sanders did at was it Jackson State or somewhere before he went over to
Mhm.
Colorado. And he walks in and you see that Netflix documentary and those speeches he's giving to these players. And I mean, there's just something about I will say had not watched any information or interviews about him until our conversation last week. Then I did. He was on Pat McAfee show this week,
Mhm.
and I like him. I mean, he may, as you said, some people may call him arrogant. This is a guy who just knows what it takes to win at that level, and that's what it
Well,
takes.
I would agree with you, and there's a profound distinction between arrogance and confidence. I think the thing that sets him apart, um, certainly Dion has not been able to create the results in the same amount of time, maybe or not. I don't know.
He did at
You
the
know,
previous school.
yeah, and well, okay, but the point that I think is interesting about Signetti and the NIL money and the transfer portal is, I mean, the way the game is structured right now, it just incentivizes going into the transfer portal. If you have a great year, go into the transfer portal and see how much see how much money people are going to throw at you. If you have a shitty year, you don't get much playing time, go into the portal and see if you can go somewhere else and play. So there's no, there's, it's a fucking free for all. I mean, it's fun for a minute. That seems like there'll be a point of diminishing return. But the fact that he can create such a high level commitment when selfishness is incentivized. Go get more money. Why wouldn't you go get more money? I mean, the kid that's now the quarterback of Miami, played at Georgia, was declared for the professional draft before he retained an agent, which excludes him from, amateur play. University of Miami throws fuck you money at him, but and he goes down to Miami and plays another year of foot. It just, to me, the cohesion, the brotherhood, all of those kinds of things. This is not our topic of the evening. Maybe it'll be
Kind
our,
of is, kind of is.
yeah, maybe it'll
I
be.
got the transition ready.
Oh, he is ready. It just, it's again. I will say, uh, all things considered, and my bias towards the Hoosiers, he's one of one, and bring on the playoffs.
So I was invited to do a lecture at a leadership conference in Los Angeles a few years ago, and the conference was called Wielding Power. And for entrepreneurs and executives, exactly what we're talking about. What does that look like? And what does it take? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it lead to something positive or not? And I chose to do my lecture that became kind of the keynote on social capital. And somebody like Signetti, it may not look to you like it looks to somebody else in another context, but he does purvey and use a certain amount of social capital. That's how he got the job. That's how he gets kids through the transfer portal. He has a way of persuading people to not only follow him, but then, as you're saying, to commit, to do something that goes beyond what they might even have thought they were capable of, even selflessly for a greater cause. That is, to me, I mean, it is the essence of attraction. He's attracting people. He's attracting their best traits that he wants, and I think that at some point is a value add. He's creating value in that relationship. So him going into these conversations, those people on the other side of him have to feel like there's an added value. He's got something for me. He's asking a lot of me, but there's something in this for me as well. So
Well, I'll
I
tell
do
you one
think
of the things that he did, because like when I had basketball tickets the night that they introduced him, uh, to the Hoosiers, and I don't know how this fits into your description, but I would imagine it's got to be some component. But he kind of, I don't know how to describe his demeanor. A little bit sloppy, like he's got this gray suit on with a white shirt, and it's kind of unbuttoned. It's like, huh, well, not quite as not quite as buttoned up as you'd like, And he kind of grabs the mic and he says a few things, and he just says, Purdue sucks. So does Michigan and Ohio State. I don't take a backseat to anybody, and I don't plan on starting now. And walks off the floor, and it's kind of like, what? Like he instantly created this mystique. Now, at the time, it's like, is he fucking nuts, or is he, And
is
it
there a
it
method to that?
yeah, it precisely. And I think this is one of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. I don't remember which one, but one of them. Well, let me tell you, that soundbite has, after beating Ohio State in the that soundbite has aged very, very well. And then you talk about the social equity that then creates. It's almost prophetic. Like it yeah, I'll defer, but that was an interesting moment in it as a desperate IU fan, can anyone give me, because our basketball team has faded from its glory of when I was there. Um, that moment was pretty integral as well. And again, it seemed brash. It seemed possibly off-putting, whatever it was. I don't know, but I'll defer back to you to put that into the context of social equity.
Well, so I think I don't want to spend all of our time on this point, but I think it's a great demarcation. There is this world, especially now with social media and independent media, that the loudest voice does get the attention. Whether you like that person or hate that person, all the persons are now watching that. Like you have attracted everybody. So as social capital, you have leveraged yourself to, yes, half the world likes me and half the world hates me, but the whole fucking world is now watching me.
Right.
And so there is something to that you could say it's a true method. And somebody who controls that, somebody who knows it and they know how to tease it in and out so it doesn't just completely turn off everybody. Like that's the little potential brilliance there. But, social exchange theory is at the heart of everything we do, whether we recognize it or not. Even John Gottman, who I know you like, talks about this. In some relationships, because of the psychological traits of one partner versus the other, you need 20 positive intentions to one negative, or 5 to 1, or 1 to 1. It just kind of depends on the dynamic of your own relationship. But we are all measuring that. We are all affected in our mood, in our relationships toward each other based on how we feel we are being treated and how we are then treating them. So this whole concept of value add, I'm sure you're going to talk about there has to be some kind of, maybe it's not an exact metric, but there is a quantification in your own mind of we're good. Me and this person, our friendship, our relationship, we're good or we're not based on what I'm getting and what I'm giving. So tell me what you meant by this whole value add concept.
Well, beckoning back to you and I's, God, it might have been our very first podcast when we were talking about, the kind of contrasting your experience with your father versus my experience with my father. And as I as I start to come to some sort of subconscious conscious realization of, okay, this archetype of sabotage that I'm experiencing is not what I want. Um, Dude, my first bromance was Mr. Rogers, and couldn't articulate why they're just, even at a what I would suggest to you at an embarrassing age, still like, I'm going to go home and watch Mr. Rogers. Like, you know, and not, there was some, internal conflict. Like, is there something wrong with me? Like, what is my problem? And, and the thing that I think Signetti and Rogers both have is they are fearlessly, unapologetically authentic. And one of the things, and I use this in my curriculum, and I thought about trying to integrate it in our conversation tonight, but there, any of the listeners can cue it up on YouTube. But Mr. Rogers testifying before Congress,
Phenomenal
and
scene.
extraordinary. I have been I I've been captivated by that for probably 15 years. I can't even tell you the number of times that I have watched it, and there's not a detail of it that doesn't fascinate me. And I don't, you may have to edit some of my musings about it, but I do think it is that critical. And the the over the senator that's over the hearing is just simply a prick. I mean, he just is a prick. And and this I Joe, this I still I like I can see it in my mind, but Mr. Rogers references a letter that he has written and has submitted to the committee, and he he says, and please read the letter that I have submitted. And the senator is like, well, do you want me to read it now? If it's that, I'm embellishing now, but it's like, if it's that damn important, I'll read it now. And Mr. Rogers doesn't flinch. He's just like, no, sir, you gave me your word that you're going to read it, so I will accept your word at face value. And it just and his pulse does not increase. He does not, there is zero fight or flight. I mean, he just stays engaged as Mr. Rogers. And then he goes on, and I cry when I watch the thing because I'm so inspired by it. I'm getting a little misty right now, but it's like, then he goes into this, the description of one, the importance of public television and his programming specifically. And it's a children's program, and we've all seen it. Changes his shoes. Won't you be my neighbor? You want to feed my fish? But you feel as if it's, Oppenheimer talking about the atomic bomb. Like it takes on this urgency and this gravity as it rightly should. But the cherry on top is the transformation of the senator.
Right. Right.
Like this guy does a 180 and just is like he says, I think he essentially says, most people think I'm a son of a bitch, but I've got tingles right now. And he's like, I think this is wonderful. This is wonderful. And and he and Mr. Rogers says in his Mr. Rogers, because that's who he is. That's who he is 24/7. There is no switch that flips him on and off. He's like, would you like for me to give you the words of one of the songs that I teach the kids? And the guy is like, absolutely, I would. And it's like, and then it's like, I would too. I want to hear the, can we sing it? It just is this absolute transformation. And it is fierce masculinity expressed through total authenticity and a gentleness that has a bowing you over sort of power. It is this, it's this what seems to be a total contradiction that like takes away any resistance that you would have, that turns you back into a little boy sitting in front of the television saying, teach me what I need to learn. And though that, when I think about attractiveness, when I think about value add, I mean, when did he die? Early 2000s?
Mhm.
I mean,
It was a while ago.
you talk about legacy. And and I don't know, in some ways I can line item like, here's the things that you should take away from what Mr. Rogers taught the world about authentic masculinity. But in other ways, it's like, I will forever be a student. I I will forever be a student.
Well, I think what you just called a dichotomy, or as we talked about with Carl Jung last week, a balance of opposites, a unity of opposites. His unyielding gentleness was never off of his back foot. He was always on his toes. Yes, Senator, you told me you would read the letter. I'll wait here as long as it takes you to read the letter. Um, and he never, it was without any condescension. It was just 100%, as you said, gentlemanly, but gentle. And at the same time, he never ever backed down because he knew he was fighting for a cause, again, social capital. The kids need this programming. This was at a very unique time where you still had fathers and men who were smacking their wives, saying, "Shut up, bitch, get back in the kitchen." And then mothers were fleeing to work. And so we had latchkey kids, a generation coming up for the first time. And he knew that role. He knew. I mean, Jeff fucking Stuckey was coming home from school, and the first thing he wanted to do was watch Mr. Rogers because you felt like you didn't have that father figure in your own dad. And here was a man who was captivating you. I mean,
And
that's
do you remember the police chief?
vaguely, you'll have to remind me the name.
He was black.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, because they were like in a swimming pool together and
Yes.
that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah,
Which just like what? Like I
yeah.
mean you the I mean he was you talk about fucking fearless.
On the front edge of society with still that genteelness that was attractive. Like that's the value add. That senator, like he was in that senator's mind, what he was feeling from Mr. Rogers as he was being a condescending piece of shit, insulting and just a literal just jackass. Uh, all he got back from Rogers was respect and patience. And that was a value add to that very short relationship, a Senate hearing, and it totally changed the course of the world. Like not just that afternoon, it changed the course of PBS funding.
I mean you think about how physically handicapped children were viewed. You know, it was not that anyone said it, but it was more like freaks, more should be hidden, should not. I mean, it was and like he brought them to life. And that's just one social issue that he transformed. And when you think about Mr. Rogers, you know, you don't there's not a person unless they're just a fucking idiot. There's not a person that doesn't just like oh, I mean that's you hear his name and that's like the internal reset that you have. And you don't think pushover, you don't think, you know, weak, you certainly don't think, you know, alpha, anything alpha made. There's no confusion. You just think Mr. Rogers. And it's like in the most attractive sort of way.
So isn't that funny though, the complete dichotomy that you look at social psychology from an evolutionary anthropology lens, and we all know we hear the stories. Well, we're on the top of the food chain. We're not the fastest. We're not the strongest. We're not anything throughout all of human history, except that we developed the most complex form of language so we could communicate together. And as soon as we started doing that, where we had social cohesion and social bonding is competitive, you know, I can win this mate, or maybe I don't attract this person or this friend, or maybe I am physically disabled in some way and somebody has to take care of me. How do I convince them I'm not a liability? What can I do for them? And so we start just gradually creating these social connections, and to this day, they are everything. But that's why I'm so fascinated by social psychology. Most people don't even understand they're in that loop, they don't know what's happening. And yet, what you just explained with both Signetti, who's created this whole ecosystem at IU of tremendous success, but it is on that really strange precipice you described. You know, his initial reactions, is this guy nuts? Or is he like, is there something here? Who knows? but at least right now he is shown to be very, very capable of persuasion and garnering and leveraging social capital. Then you see Mr. Rogers doing it just as masterfully, just as effectively, but even from a greater sense, I think, of I don't know, is there a way we can say kind intellect? Like
Oh,
both of these guys are playing chess, multiple moves across the board, but two totally different personalities. So there's just kind of a spectrum of social capital.
and it does seem when you listen to the players talk, and I don't, it's like, and I think it was Simon Sinek that did the work with the Navy SEALs, and um, anytime there was a heroic, a particular SEAL or special forces that acted in a particularly heroic way, the what why were you able to do such a heroic thing? And the answer 100% of the time has been because the guy next to me would have done it for me.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with the heroic act or the individual, like this was just my turn. I was serving my brother.
And you make that
And
decision. Like you might die, but you made that decision without thought, just
yes,
impulse.
and you hear that kind of language amongst the IU players. He's created that kind of cohesion, and I would say with Mr. Rogers, there was that similar sense of selflessness in that he was always pulling someone up. It was all whether children or physical handicap, racial, whatever it was always, I will use the power that I have to for someone else. And there's a commonality there that it's not, first of all, it's not the conventional, alpha dominance, like I dominate over you or you dominate over me. It certainly goes beyond that to whatever degree I have power, social equity, whatever that is. I use it for the sake of someone else. And I maybe that's the next evolutionary step that we're being asked if we will take or not. Will we use Andrew Tate dominance, or will we use our power regeneratively? And it from where I sit right now, it seems like we have to make that as contagious as we can, as quickly as we can, or we are fucked.
And we always do. And as I sit on that line, straddling it, in my own mind, I can get pretty dour and think, wow, this may be the time we collapse. But we love always wins, kindness always wins, the bully always gets taken down, but it can take us to the brink. But I wanna bring this down to a more granular level where I know you
Okay.
can provide more clinical psychology experience. And two examples from pop culture. We've already mentioned Scott Galloway in our masculinity series, but he famously, at least in my mind, every time he talks about his sons, he has a particular line of thought that he says, "This is my principle of how I'm raising them." As a father to young, pre-teen, kids, or maybe one of them is a teen, two young men, he says, you're at the point where you need to start being an added value. He uses the words in your relationships. To this point, all you've ever done is take. Everybody, every teacher, every parent, everybody has just given you everything. It's time for you to have a net positive value in the world. And my goal as their father, by the time they are 18, 22, etc., is that they are 100% a positive value to the world, to every relationship. And that would be my mark that I succeeded as a father. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, in his latest book, talked about his father. And even though his father wasn't a great guy, he was of that generation of pre-World War II kind of, men. He said one thing, you know, be useful. Be useful. Your mark as a human being, what you'll be judged by, whether you get my approval or not as a father, is whether or not you are useful to other people. That's a very outward, socially expressive, as you said, pulling people up perspective.
Yes, and I do think particularly I think there is, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, and you can even be the one that gets mad at me. But I do think there is a unique capacity about the masculine to do that. I think we see it. I do think we see that in parenting in particular. Like it's kind of like dad takes the child and says, "Get your ass out there and mow the grass. It's time for you to be used." Whatever that is, I'm not. I do you need to get? Do you need to correct me in anything that I or am I doing?
I'm going to say you are the one who has seen decades of patients and clients in a psychological capacity. So who am I to question you, fine sir?
Okay, that's fine. Then I'll proceed. I want to be gentle about that. I do think there is something about the masculine that enables us to launch our children out into more of harm's way, and obviously with a protective guard on that. But it's like I mean, you scraped your knee. It's not the end of the fucking world. Like it's though like those sorts of things, and I'm putting that within the context of parenting. But it's just like, and you've done that. You've made a career out of this. I have tried to make a career out of that. That in my therapy sessions are more of a pulling up. I'm less of a comfort. I comfort, but I'm not the therapist that's like, tell me how that makes you. That's just not my modality. I'm not negating that. I'm just saying my goal in therapy, and I think your goal in all of your coaching and consulting and training has been, I want to pull you forward. That's what I want to access. I even want to pull you more forward than you're comfortable going. And and I do believe that that is something that and I think that's what Galloway's talking about, what Arnold was saying. And I do think as as a part of attractive masculinity, that is something that we do have to activate.
Yeah, and I think it all does come back to, or it all points back to, that social capital construct. I mean, think of it as credit or wealth. And what do people feel about you? I've said for a long time, and this is not out of any form of egotism, but I feel grateful and fortunate that I could go into any city and call half a dozen people, and they would be happy to have me in their home. They would want to go out to lunch with me. And I'm not that person. That's why I'm a little bit standoffish with Signetti. I'm not that person who is going to play that power construct game for some kind of longer term social capital. I am going to be authentic and I am going to be kind. And I do have more Mr. Rogers than Signetti in me. But at the same time,
And what's
you.
interesting, if I can come to my friend's defense, he's 65.
So he's of
Like,
that era.
well, I'm saying like he was at Alabama. Like he conceivably he could have bided his time. He could have
Hmm.
waited. He was under the Saban tree, like, and he decided, I think I can do this. I think I can do this my way. I think he went to a division. He went from an assistant at Alabama, being a head coach at like a Division 3 school, something like that, making not enough money. And he has the same assistants that he had then.
So I'm going to accept your correction I'm gonna happily accept it because I do see if he's doing it out of kindness, like he knows the context he's in. He's with these young men who are again tempted with millions of dollars, the transfer portal, temptations of success, and people who could persuade them literally off a cliff. And he's the one who's saying, I know I can shepherd these kids better. I can give them some value. I can give them the kind of character that they can't get somewhere else. And if that's his MO, if that's his reason for creating this harder facade, I mean, kind of like a Bill Belichick. The guy has resting serial killer face and like he has these grown men, 30, 40-year-old men who are multi millionaires who could be traded in an instant, and yet he also captured that same thing where these pro football players wanted to play for him. They wanted to earn his respect because they respected him so much. So that's kind of that Signetti model, just a different personality type, and it works well where he's at.
And my personal Jesus. So anytime you say even something that could be construed as a disparaging word, I'm gonna be
Well,
like,
we
look,
all do.
motherfucker, that's
We all,
Jesus.
we got our heroes. We got our heroes. So he has leveraged that social capital even beyond his own team.
Well,
And
and okay, so and again, I because I do think this is like an element to it. It's like, when Penn State fired their coach middle of the season, it, it- the everyone knew who they were coming for. And they could offer whatever they wanted to offer, including the lore of Penn State. And the AD went to Signetti, offered him a deal. Like 24 hours later, they signed the deal. And this is where I want to be. This is what I want to do. There's just, and again, it's like generational money. It's like, oh, what a sacrifice. He's only making $20 million a year. How's he going to get by? I understand that, but it's like, but I've never been tempted with, okay, I can say yes to this or get a blank check. I've never said no to, whatever the possibilities. So I don't know how hard that is, but it's like, and I'm, being somewhat tongue in cheek, but there is something about him that is the process is the most important thing. Being useful is the most important thing. Advancing people is the most important thing. And it's like if I'm in a place where I am effectively doing that and I have a level of influence, why would I tear that down and start over just because I can get more money or just because I can get more name recognition? So there is something there again that like the process is bigger. It's like when the Navy SEAL gets the recognition, he's like, I don't care. If he had to do it, he would have done it. And Mr. Rogers about I don't I don't give two shits about how people perceive me as creating this children's program and I'm going to go change the world. And there's a that's that fearless authenticity,
that's
that
what I was going
un,
to come back to.
that unshakable authenticity that he showed in that Senate hearing, that's where the power originates.
And that's what I would say about somebody like Signetti. The last chapter has yet to be written, whereas we have the ability to look back on Mr. Rogers' life. So I would say, as I'm giving him credit for him creating this great space for these young men, these athletes, and in that kind of environment, it does tend to take a harder personality like his on the exterior. But if on the inside of those relationships, if he does have the authenticity that you're describing, and he does at least show some shades of vulnerability, our first topic in this series, then that's instant glue. Like now those kids are never going to leave, and they would literally die for that guy. If it was all just the hardness and the social value of reciprocation, like you work your ass off for me, and I promise I'll get you in the NFL, you know, okay, some of those relationships can fade over time. And even his lore. I mean, some of these people who have attracted a lot of attention, they fall. And it's easy to walk away from somebody who ends up to be shown very inauthentic and very unaligned with the character they pretended to project. So again, that's why I said I hope it's all there. You know, right now we're seeing a 2 year career that just seems like a rocket ship. Uh, and his players do like him, so that they love him, and so that's my window to, who he may be.
Well,
But
and I do think there's an element that kind of correlates to what we talked about last week about, the shadow and growth and the path to authenticity. It's a difficult path. It's a terrifying path. And I do think he models that in like he walks his walk whenever he said, I can stay here and just sit on my hands at Alabama, or I can go create my own path. And I do think that history is contributes to his authenticity. Like I didn't just, I didn't take the easy way of sitting and waiting until it was my turn at Alabama. Like I fucking went to, like, it was not a lateral move. I essentially what looked like committed professional suicide, and I knew I wasn't, and I took the hard path. I and again, and it's just, it's like Mr. Rogers. I mean, he defied every, especially at that time, as you were saying, what quote unquote masculinity looked like at that time versus his, little children's program. I mean, it's like you could quite like, this is what you're doing with your life, dude. This is
we should
you're
get we should get matching Mr. Rogers tattoos. We
I'm tomorrow. I
Well,
entrust you with the design work. I won't
well,
go face. I'd probably do neck.
you could talk me
Um,
into that. You could probably we could think about that.
but
So
absolutely,
a little bit of a transition to
please.
how in, let's say, intimate relationships, marriages, how do we make sure we're adding value in a way that is reciprocal? Because that's also a delicate balance, as John Gottman talked about. In each marriage, it's not going to look the same. You're not going to have the same metrics and qualitative and quantitative components. So just let's say you are in a relationship and this is somebody you really want to be with and you see a future here. How do you make sure you are adding value that is perceptible to them and attractive?
So my own check and balances is your perspective in the relationship is just as valid as mine, because one of the things that can be, versus dominance, right? Well, I'm the fucking therapist. Like, it's like, okay, yes, I am, but it's our relationship, and I have to keep myself in check with that, because in an intimate relationship, I'm not a therapist. I'm another person that is trying to create a meaningful, fulfilling relationship. So that may be, so I guess what I would say is to the listener, how do you have, what's your check and balance? What is it that you may try to leverage in the relationship? And for men, I can tell you our default, what we both most go to is valuing being right. That's that's where we can get stuck, is like, well, there's a right and a wrong, and who's right and who's wrong. And we'll either be aggressive about that or we'll be submissive about it. Both of them are equally as off-putting. You know, you're right, honey. I'm sorry. Like, and it's, so then if what is the power that I try to leverage, and how do I keep that in check, is my first 1B is showing up. Sometimes for us as men, we will either resent our wives, the old ball and chain, and the bitch is always trying to control me, or her perspective, the old, the corollary to that would be if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Both of those are deeply and profoundly flawed. This is our marriage, our relationship. It If it is to be healthy and fulfilling, we both have to contribute equally. Her happiness is not the litmus test. My happiness is not the litmus test. Now, we have to gauge those, right? I need to be able to sit down with my partner and say, "Tell me how you feel about our relationship." And listen to understand, not listen to say, "That's bullshit. You're never fucking happy. You're always unhappy and that's why we're unhappy," or capitulating in the other direction. "You're right. I'm sorry. I need to do better and I promise I'm going to try hard." Again, both of those are equally destructive to attractiveness in the relationship.
And you
We're not,
can't, to me, you can't fake those things. If you brought up the Dunning-Kruger effect last week, and if you are just trying to pacify your partner and say, okay, I have to acquiesce because the therapist said I need to get off my high horse, but you really do think you're right and the other person is wrong, and et cetera, like you're just delaying the inevitable. For you, I'm kind of projecting myself into your body for a minute, and I'm thinking, here's Jeff in this relationship, and he is the therapist with all this experience, and he's got these two thoughts. Here's my significant other, and I'm trying to play that role. I'm not a therapist, I'm a partner in this relationship that I'm trying to create fulfillment and reciprocity for both of us. But at the same time, you could in the back of your mind say, well, she's still wrong. I mean, I am the therapist. Or you could really check yourself and say, maybe I don't know. Like, I've been teaching this with all these people, but now I'm confronting this in my own life. Like, maybe I've got something to learn here. Like, do you have that kind of abrupt honesty with yourself?
I try to stay anchored to that I have something to learn here. That is and I don't know if it's muscle memory. I've been the therapist for so long, or I'm just an asshole, but it's a hell of a lot harder than I wish it were. I wish I could tell you that's pretty easy, Joe. I just always think my default setting without any effort at all is, do I have something to learn here? It's I have to grab hold and stay anchored to that. And even if that part of my brain activates, I try to just let it be white noise. I try to stay, even if asked, like, well, you're the therapist, what do you think? I I almost always try to reject that. It's our relationship. What I what I do during the day does not help or hinder our relationship. You and I have to create the win for us. And I I try to stay anchored to that. Sometimes I slip off, but then I try to go back and say that's not useful. We've got to get back in balance.
Yeah, I wish I could remember an exact time, but I do recall it as a bit of an era where maybe 20, 25 years ago, I was that guy who just thought I was right about more than I was right about, or I certainly had more confidence than I should have. And at this point now, my default is what you just said. I don't know, maybe like I think this and this is my experience, but maybe I'm totally wrong. And it's like somewhere in that transition, there was some grinding of the gears to get there. But I feel like there were a couple steps of almost instant enlightenment that, oh my gosh, I could be flawed. I could be wrong. And it is that Dunning-Kruger kind of teeter-totter. But I'm curious with people that you do counsel, do they have some light bulb moments? Like, because you do kind of serve as that referee. and you've got this objective timeout space as a therapy session. When it works well, do people go home and they're like, wow, like that changes everything. I was wrong. Like, how can I be better?
And it's magical. I mean, it is magical when you see a couple get out of the power struggle to no longer value being right, but let's understand this together and let's be right together, if you will. It's goddamn it's one of the most beautiful things that I have ever had the privilege to watch. And I had an incident with a client, and actually, it's like one of the rare times that, hey man, I need a session because I need to tell you about how awesome something went. And it's like, okay, that never happens, but I will absolutely do that and bring my popcorn. And a couple that is dealing with a lot of moving parts, and very delicate conversation, and they broke every rule that I've ever given them. They were at dinner one night on a date, and then they brought up this, and I'm like, and he's like, just hold tight, let me get through this. And they had a very difficult, delicate conversation incredibly well, and then went on about their evening. Neither one was, both felt understood. No one was interested in punishing the other person. And there was an unspoken sense in which that was amazing. We just unintentionally had that really hard conversation and we fucking nailed it. And then they celebrated that. And I'm telling you, Joe, of all of the absolutely unbelievable afford experiences I have been afforded as a therapist, near the top, if not the top, is seeing a couple stumble into that, and it just is so fucking beautiful.
Well, so it's interesting you brought up that example because I was gonna tell you something that's maybe a little bit more organized and intentional because you orchestrated it. When you had Tracy and and this goes back 10 years ago when we were doing therapy with you, I've seen other people do this now, but we had an appointment on the calendar, a weekly 30-minute meeting, and you were very clear, 30 minutes timer, Joe, it can't be 6 hours like you would want it to be. Um, and it was an interesting time out because speaking like we did last week of personas and you're in this maybe some kind of a power struggle. I wouldn't call it that, but I guess it is. I mean, if you're in conflict, you're defending something, you're fighting for something. But it was just like a timeout. It was like, hey, 23 and a half hours of this day in this 30-minute time, we're going to put down our roles, we're going to put down our personas, and all of a sudden we're just two neutral people trying to decide how do we want our marriage to be. How am I doing on this? How are you doing on this? Jeff gave us this homework. Well, I think this and that. And then you just it's like that halftime, and then you go back in the locker rooms and you put on your pads. But that at least gave us that practice time, like you just described about that couple. Like, oh, we can actually do this. We can talk objectively. We can elevate for a few minutes above our marriage fray and discuss it. And then when we come back down to it, it's a little bit easier. We've got some more skills that we learned to operate with each other. We learned how to add a little more value for each other.
That's, yes. And then when that becomes the momentum of the relationship, it's like, oh, this is why marriage is fucking awesome.
Well, it's almost too easy now because you defer to each other like that. You assume the best, not the worst. You're not on edge. It's just so different. I stumbled across, I shouldn't say this too loud. I don't want Tracy to hear me. At that point in our marriage, I wrote an anthology of poetry called, because it was our 25th anniversary, and I didn't know if we are going to make it to 26, called 25 Years of Love and Loss. And it was just all this cathartic, like just the worst relational purging you can come out, but very artistic. I mean, I do take my craft seriously.
We know that.
But now I like now I have 10 extra years of bliss where I'm not in that space. So I'm actually thinking of going back to that and seeing if there's anything there, but with these fresh eyes because I'm not in that. But anyway, like that this it was catastrophically difficult then, and it's almost comical to look back and see why. And it was just when you're it's again, I'll bring up Gottman, that flooded state, like nonstop. You're just so outside of anything that could have value add, that could have social capital. It's just a weird difference.
It yes, almost unrecognizable. I mean, it's like one, how could we get to a place of such safety and security and camaraderie and intimacy and all of those, and then like what the fuck were we fighting about back there? It's like what it just it and it is it's so possible. I mean, it's so possible. Not easy, simple, not easy. And it just is, it's like, when what is our divorce rate at? 56% or whatever it's at. And it's like, I'm divorced. I'm obviously not afraid of divorce. Divorce creates as many problems as it solves. It's not a fucking magic pill. I don't have doubt about my divorce, but it's not like fucking pixie dust came down from the heavens, and it just it does create problems. And it's like, again, people's business. If you want to get divorced, get divorced with realistic expectations. Make sure you've done the pro con list, right? um and there are obviously certain situations in which divorce is an imperative, but Jesus, when you're at 56%. I mean, come on. There's not that many fucked up,
Hmm.
narcissistic, gaslighting, abusive people out there. There just isn't. It's solvable. And it can begin with men who show up authentically the way that Mr. Rogers showed up at the Senate hearing. It can be transformational. We have the power. We can unleash it.
Well, I will say in all other contexts, an occupational context, a friend, that same kind of timeout. Let's exit our relationship for a minute so we can actually talk about it. I think of how many relationships and social connections could be repaired if people just did that once in a while. But it also, we were talking off camera, and it made me think of like where I find myself as an employee in one context and an employer in another, and just to take that higher road and think like what do I need from this? But what I really want is cohesion and unity, and I want to maintain this relationship professionally or personally. And so if I find any conflict arising, as you just said, to be the bigger person and be able to step back and say, okay, what do I need to do here to add value back into this relationship to get it back on track or keep it on track? Otherwise, it's just going to end. I mean, friendships and again, employer relationships, colleague relationships, that there aren't as many connections that can be devastating as a divorce with kids and that sort of thing. So it seems like it should be easier, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's easier to just walk away and blow that up. What's your experience in those situations?
Well, I always tell people, it's like, and I'll say this, it's like, the the way that pathology has gotten conflated, it's like now everybody's a narcissist. Well, guess what? Statistically, they're not. It just it's actually itty bitty. Like, but we live in this period of conflation where, everything is abusive and everything is gaslighting and everything is what, flavor of the day. And it's like it just simply isn't. And you need to get some perspective about that. And it's the only way to have a 40-year marriage is to be married for 40 years. And it's not easy. It's just not. It's going to ebb and flow. And there's going to be periods of time where you're best friends. And there's going to be periods of time where you've thought, I've wasted this much time of my life. There are just simply seasons. And to have done life with someone for 40 years, whether it's friendship or marriage or whatever it is, it's pretty fucking powerful. And there's no shortcuts to that.
I just met a couple who was celebrating their 68th anniversary.
And I guarantee you they've got meteoric highs and they have got fucking shithole lows. And it's all part of their story. And it's, we've been, our delusion and preoccupation with happiness is, it's, it's rat poison. You ain't always going to be happy. Your
Can
marriage is
I,
not a honeymoon.
can I end with another one of your heroes we haven't talked about tonight?
Well, of course,
Martin Seligman, a
my
founder of
true hero, Martin
yeah,
is
the another tattoo. So of course, as a founder of positive psychology, I'm going to read to you his top 10 list for creating a positive community. So, community
awesome.
of friends, community of intimacy, community of occupational colleagues, whatever it's going to be. First of all, you have common goals. So you're coming alongside and say, "Hey, why are we even doing this? Why are we together?" Like you keep that kind of thing in check, what you want out of this. Freedom of expression. You want the other person to have a voice. Uh, Address concerns with sensitivity. You're not just punching each other. Clear policies and obligations, roles, etc. These things are talked about. They're clear. There's a sense of fairness, which is value add. I'm not here to get, I'm here to give. Celebrating the commonalities, creating symbolism and heritage and tradition, things like that. Like we're building something here that is something. Promoting interaction, like you want to be together, you want to do things. You have roles and have hierarchies that stand by community values. So again, it's we're equal, but we just kind of do some different things here. That's okay. It's another thing in our sessions with you that was interesting to me because I was kind of stuck with a very weird sense of unindividuatedness, and so that pulling apart. Prioritizing effective communication, and finally making smart decisions, you know, stepping out of the relationship, stepping out of yourself and saying, what would a smart person do here? What do I really want out of this? So, just interesting how all of those are just parts of keeping the ball moving down the field as a team, as true. I keep using the word tonight, cohesion. It just you're not always having the same day, you're not always feeling the same way, but you have that common goal of we're in this because we want to be in this.
Could not agree more. Yeah. It just, yes.
So I'm struggling with a prompt because we have this entire series now starting with to be attractive, you need to be vulnerable. You need to learn what real authenticity means, where you can even be honest with yourself. And now this value add proposition that we are
I did it for you. I've got your prompt.
okay.
If
One good prompt. You're gonna
if
watch this the
any
Senate hearing with Mr. Rogers.
if any of our listeners want to do a deep dive, I have created a process to transform into Mr. Rogers. 6 exercises that will take you from where you are to transforming into your authentic self. All they have to do is email and ask me for it.
Okay, what's the email address? I mean, we have it in our notes, I'm sure.
Yeah, stuckycounseling at
Yep.
gmail.com.
Okay. And that's going to turn me into Mr. Rogers.
It will absolutely turn you
Are you going to
into
laugh if you get an email from me tonight?
it. No, if it will, I've done it. I mean, I did it. I was like, okay, time to soar up on some of this stuff, bud. Like, you need to, like, absolutely, like, yeah, it, um,
So speaking of authenticity, 10 years ago when I was sitting in your waiting room week after week, what was in the middle of the coffee table?
my Mr. Rogers book, right?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers' book right
Yeah,
there.
still have it. Still, it's every morning I read from Meditations, uh, and then I just read a entry from his book. It's that has become my like grounding. Uh, yeah,
Okay,
it,
I'm gonna go find that one.
yeah,
Okay.
it absolutely was.
Okay, man,
So
and off camera, I'm gonna talk to you about our next series because I've got something that's gonna break
here,
the internet.
let's fucking go.
All right,
Yeah.
man. Thank you, Jeff, and we will see you guys next time in Human.